Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. In this video I'm going to have some fun with whiskey and tea and show you some of the experiments that I've been doing, because I think that these two drinks make an absolutely stellar pairing if you do them correctly. So what I have in front of me here is a whiskey that I've just poured out. We'll talk about the whiskey shortly, but I poured it out about 10 minutes ago to let it sit for a little while so that it can just sort of open up. And we've got inside here Lost Robe, Beidou. If you've not seen a video about this, and I'll stick a link in the description below, one of my favorite Yanchas, rock Oolong from Wuyi Mountains. Very, very rich in sort of sugary bourbon, vanilla, oats, you know, all of those really, really sweet, deep flavor profiles that I look for also in a whiskey. Also butterscotch and some cherry notes, so some brightness. Really, really lovely. We'll quickly rinse this tea. In fact, you know what? I am gonna rinse it actually, because I just noticed that the temperature of the water was not high enough. So let me just crank the temperature up. It was at 95. I want to make sure I get very, very high temperature. So let's smell these wet leaves. It's incredibly perfumed tea. Yanchas in general are always going to be really very, very rich on the nose in terms of aromatics. This batch of Lost Robe, it's like everything you want a Da Hong Pao to be. Lots of red fruits, but the red fruits are not so sort of tangy. They're more in the sort of dried cherry note. I'm getting those sort of dried cherry oat cookies, chewy oat cookies, getting butterscotch. I'm getting some sort of apple notes as well. Oxidized apple, of course. I'm getting the roast, the toasty note. Reminds me of toast and caramel and butterscotch. Beautiful, lovely balance. Right, I'm going to brew this quite strong because I've got a couple of experiments to do. I'm going to drink this one because I've got no rinse bowl. I wasn't planning on rinsing, but the water temperature wasn't hot enough. I'm going to do a masterclass video about brewing Yancha shortly, I think, because a lot of people talk about the keeping the rinse, and I want to talk about my feelings about that. I'm not going to tell you now, but it's a popular thing to do, or at least it is something that people do, and so we want to sort of explore that. So I'll do that in a masterclass, but I'm just going to drink this. It's obviously just sort of opening up, but I'm getting those oxidized apples, some vanilla, some sort of vanilla-y new oak, virgin oak casks. So while this is brewing, I'm going to brew it for another 10 or 15 seconds. Let's introduce the whiskey. So this is new for me. I've done a video actually where we've infused tea in whiskey with my brother. I'll put a link in the description below. You can check out how you can infuse tea in an alcohol. But right now, we're going to focus on something different. So this is a GlenAllachie. It's a cask strength, 2007, 13-year-old age statement on it, aged in virgin oak barrels, which is kind of unusual. So normally you get sherries and sort of bourbon casks. I am not a whiskey expert, by the way, but you know, I'm just sort of sharing the knowledge that I know. So it's cask strength, which means it's not been diluted. It's non-chill filtered, so it means it's not been filtered, which I think does add a certain texture to whiskies, or maintains a certain texture to whiskies, and it's not colored as well, so there's no caramel coloring in there. So those are the things I look for generally in a whiskey: cask strength, non-chill filtered, and non-colored. I will buy whiskies that are diluted, in other words, not cask strength as well. But I really love cask strength whiskies because you get a lot more in terms of the bang for your buck, but also you have more control over how you want your whiskey to be. And so I've got the whiskey here. This is GlenAllachie. As I said, the strength on it is 59.6% alcohol by volume. Anything else? 13 years. So it's a limited bottling, 272 bottles total from GlenAllachie Distillery, non-chill filtered, natural color. Right. Let's taste the tea first. And I'm going to pour some tea in here, and you'll find out why later. So let's pour this this tea, Lost Robe. And let's give it a smell. A little bit of new car vinyl smell. I've written it in the tasting notes, new car already, and it definitely has that sort of just this sort of slight sort of varnished, lacquery kind of note, which I think is very nice amongst all of those sort of charred casks, butterscotch and vanilla, and then those cherry cookies on top. All right, now let's have a smell of this. This has been about 10 or 15 minutes. So, you know, 13 years, leave it for about 10 minutes just to sort of open up. 59.6% volume. Lots of vanilla. I'm getting bright lemon zest, golden raisins, a little bit of apricot. I'm getting a lot of butterscotch as well. Yeah, butterscotch, a little bit of, I want to say heather honey, but it's deeper than that. It's like almost like cooked down honey, or it reminds me of, no, I was going to say it reminds me of cooked down condensed milk, but it's not as milky as that. It's more like butterscotch. Now I'm getting more orange note, orange skins, and yeah, like a Grand Marnier or a Cointreau kind of sort of orangey note coming through. Very, very delicious, delicious, delicious whiskey. I only bought it recently and we're already sort of down to we've already consumed quite a lot of it. Okay, let's quickly sip this whiskey. Lovely oily mouthfeel, thick, has a great movement on the mouth. As I said, I'm not a whiskey expert, but I'll just sort of bring my tea experience to this. So it has a lovely movement in the mouth. It spreads very nicely on the tongue. I'm getting a little tingly sort of spiciness on the sides of the tongue, like not too prickly considering the high strength of it in terms of its alcohol. It's very, very well balanced. I don't feel the need to dilute it in any way. That prickliness gives a sort of refreshing, almost sort of seltzery sort of quality to the whiskey. I'm getting a lot of those vanilla-y new cask notes to it, and a surprising amount of caramel and butterscotch, especially considering it's not sort of, you know, in the bourbon cask aging, and also a surprising amount of fruit notes considering it's not sherry cask. All right, let's try this. More of the bourbon cask, more oaty, more grainy, more yeah, those chewy oat cookies. Incredible. Both beautiful drinks. Right, so one thing that is often done with whiskey, for those of you who don't know, is adding water to whiskey. And what that does is a lot of the aromatics are sort of locked in with the ethanol, with the alcohol. And when you add some water and you bring down the alcohol by volume, you bring it down, that releases a lot of aromatics because they sort of escape from the trap of the ethanol. They get released. And so you get this different balance of aromatics, not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, and you've got to play around with the whiskey. And as I said, I really love this whiskey straight up like this, but you know, adding some water definitely switches it up. But what happens if you don't add water, but you add tea? So let me just drink one more little sip of this. Just to calibrate. Ooh, sweeter. Fruit cake. a date sticky toffee pudding. Really, really sweet. Ooh, great, great whiskey. GlenAllachie 2007. I'm not being paid for that, by the way. All right, so I'm going to take literally half a teaspoon of this Lost Robe, which has now cooled down to room temperature. And by the time it's on this spoon and it's conducted away, it's definitely room temperature. All right, so we're going to just add maybe 5 drops. Shifted it. What am I getting? More vanilla. A little bit of a taffy candy quality. It's lightened it. It's brightened it. The oranges have shifted more into the limoncello, sweet lemon note. Okay, let's sip this. Now this is still the taste of whiskey, of course. And this is what I'm trying to explore here, is I don't want to sort of mix whiskey and tea like one after the other or somehow make some sort of weird cocktail. What I want to do is take the whiskey and just see if I can tweak it. Instead of just adding water, what we're doing is just adding a little bit of the flavor of the tea to it, because I think that the flavors work so well together. Somehow made a smoother mouthfeel. Although having said that, after I've swallowed, I get a little bit more grip and a little bit more aromatic release on the back of my tongue. Flavor shift has happened as well. Picking up a little bit more cask. And this is impossible to know whether or not, well, it's not impossible. I'd have to have another whiskey here and do water to do A-B the difference. If you want that video, I'll do it. Maybe I'll post it on Instagram. But I'm getting a little bit more cask compared with it when it was pure. I'm getting a little bit more of charred note to it. Which do I prefer? Both good. I think that I would probably opt for the pure versus the mix. But I do think that this method works. I think that you taking a strong extraction of a tea and mixing just a few drops in a whiskey definitely can bring about some really interesting marriages of flavor. And this is very, very delicious, albeit I just love the pure stuff in general. It's got a bit more of florals, violets coming out. Less jammy, less sort of dessert-like than the original. So that's one way of doing it. Taking some tea and adding taking some whiskey and adding a few drops of tea. Let me just reset my palate here. The other method is one that I really, really, really love and is my preferred way of doing things. I don't have a towel here, so I'm just going to flick this. And that is to do the opposite, but in a more understated way. Just dip your spoon into the whiskey. Let it sort of just drip off, so you're hardly taking any whiskey, and just stir that into your tea. Now, what's happening here is if the aromatics of the whiskey are released when you reduce the ABV and you get this sort of burst of release of aromatics, then this is even less ABV, right? This is practically zero alcohol. And I am picking up the addition of a extra vanilla, super boosted the vanilla, super boosted the butterscotch, added a certain citrus to the tea. Let's give this a taste. I think that this is the best way to experience this pairing. The whiskey is obviously with the intensity of that distillation process, very strong. And so adding the tea to the whiskey is a more subtle adaptation or a more subtle manipulation of the whiskey flavor. Whereas when you're adding like the coating of whiskey onto the tea, you get a definite shift in the tea, but it's still subtle enough that tea is still the star of the show. I'm getting all of the tea flavors, cherries, bourbon casks, butterscotch, caramel. But then I've got the addition of orange, spice, fruitcake, a little bit lemony. This is delicious. Let me brew one more infusion. And of course you have to consider temperatures as well, because if you're, having hot tea, then, as soon as you put that coated spoon of whiskey into your tea, all of that alcohol is going to dissipate. Any alcohol that's on the spoon is going to dissipate. And therefore you've got practically a zero alcohol drink, but all of the aromatic release that you get is still there. And that is what I absolutely adore. Okay. So another brew of this new batch of Lost Robe. More aromatic than I remember previous batches of Lost Robe, but it's been a while, so it's always difficult to store all of those flavors in your memory. Right, cheers everybody. It's going to be hot. More of that rocky minerality coming through, just to give it some structure, some crunch, some extra oomph in the mouth in terms of texture. Right, let's do this again. Little sort of glaze of whiskey goes into here. And you can pick it up on the nose. Fruitcake. Extra little addition of fruitcake. Nice. I'm going to add a little bit more this time. Just let a little bit of the residual sort of drops go in. Again, I think that this is practically a zero alcohol drink, although of course there will be some. Wow. It's like this fiesta of aromatics on the nose. I'm getting all that the Lost Robe gave, so it's not hiding anything, but suddenly there's taffy candies and Parma violets and these extra floral notes coming through. That sort of virgin oak vanilla-y note is different to the sort of deep set bourbons and vanilla notes of the original. It just is like a lighter, brighter, more sort of virgin wood note. Sort of like that sort of buttery, vanilla-y note that you get from maybe a New World sort of Chardonnay in the sort of, those virgin oaks. Creamy notes dancing on the tongue. It's just a perfect marriage. And I think that whiskey and Yancha is the place to start. But of course, you can explore with different teas and with different liquors. But I think that whiskey and Yancha is currently my favorite to play with. And of course, you don't want to be, wasting expensive whiskey or expensive tea with too many experiments. So play around, tread carefully, tread lightly, or if you want, just go crazy and see what you come up with. I'd be interested to hear your results. But I think that is the best way to pair whiskey and tea. The other way works, it is good, but it depends on the whiskey. Some whiskeys really benefit, especially if they're cask strength, with that addition of water. And if they do, then try it with some tea, some quite strongly brewed tea. This GlenAllachie is just an absolute winner. Gorgeous, gorgeous whiskey on its own at its sort of 59% ABV in my opinion. So I don't think it really benefits that much from the addition of water. But you can try, of course, with your whiskey. But this is spectacular, and it would work even with a 40 ABV, like if you've got a non-cask strength, because the aromatics will have such concentration that when you add it to the tea, especially the warm tea, it'll just sort of blossom in the cup. And it's still there. So it doesn't just dissipate, you know, it stays vanilla-y. It's like you've just tweaked the Yancha, not necessarily making it better, but just different. And that's what I love in terms of experimentation. So try out yourself. Let me know your thoughts. The whiskey tea combo. If you want more whiskey videos or, you know, videos around whiskey and tea, then please do let me know in the comments below. That's it, tea heads. Check out our other videos, taste our teas wherever you are in the world by browsing mayleaf.com, and come visit us if you're ever in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the sublime stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.